Hello, and welcome to the SUDO Show where business meets Linux. I'm Bill, and in the virtual boardroom with me today are Neal and Noel. This month, we are talking about the promotion paradox. Does climbing the golden management ladder really pay off? Let's find out on episode 77 of the SUDO Show. Okay, so we're talking about the promotion paradox here, but first I think we have to kind of define it. And that's where we get into the idea of the Peter Principle meets the tech sector. And if anybody doesn't know what the Peter Principle it is competence inversion. So in other words, historically, the higher up the management ladder you go, the less technical you are. Is that good, bad? I mean, think about it. You're a phenomenal systems administrator, DevOps engineer, developer. Your reward? Well, you get promoted to team leader manager. And yet the very skills that got you promoted, so coding, troubleshooting, sysadmin, being the brain dump for everybody else, are now the things you are not supposed to be doing. Now your life is filled with meetings, budgets, calendars, peopleware, reviews. Is this really where we want to go in our life? I guess that all depends, and that's why we're here to talk about it.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating about this topic in particular is that so many of those skills are, for lack of a better word, like transferable. The skills that you learn in troubleshooting can be helpful in certain areas when it comes to dealing and working with people. And the best managers that I've had and worked with have learned how to do management through finding ways to work with people, but there are also classes that my managers have taken in order to be better at working with people. And I think it's a very learnable skill, but it has to be something that comes from within, and it has to be something you're motivated and interested in doing. The worst managers I've worked with have been the ones that have basically been like, well, no one else is available and you've been here the longest, so here you go. You are now manager. Congratulations. And here's the pay raise and all the extra stress you get with it.
I would probably come in and say a little bit to the contrary on that part. I think one of the things that I suspect leads to the wisdom of promoting people who are phenomenal individual contributors to become managers is because in order to become a phenomenal contributor, you have to be able to work with other people. You have to be able to empathize and collaborate, and you have to interface, and you wind up demonstrating little nuggets of the same skills you wind up using when you are doing management and leadership and things like that. You know, in many respects, the roles are not that different. It's the objects that you're working with, right? Like, so as a systems administrator or a software engineer or whatever, right? You're typically working with the output or the objective of a product, right? But as a team lead, your objective is the team, right? And so you take many of the same things that you would do. Your troubleshooting becomes, people, working with people and talking to them. Like the same skills you use to troubleshoot, you would then turn around and say, okay, how do I talk to this person about, like, how do I figure out what's going wrong? Because again, it's a different, it's still troubleshooting. It's just a different kind. As Bill alluded earlier, peopleware, right? Well, I'm not saying that people are simple. By all means, they're not. But like when you're talking about working with others and also, being a lead and being essentially the layer between them who are doing a lot of the heavy lifting and people above you who are expecting them to produce, that's a meaningful thing to have. And if you do it right, you could actually amplify their productivity. And that's, I think, what the hope people tend to have when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, you're trying to spread your sphere of influence and being able to provide more assistance by multiplying the work that you can do by providing your skills and leadership to others. And I think there's definitely a ladder when it comes to how does someone become a manager. And I think team lead is definitely one of the first like rungs on the ladder, essentially, because you start learning those leadership skills, you start learning how to interface with people, you start learning how to multiply your skills and communicate with others. And I think it's very much a myth in the tech industry if you want to be even just an excellent individual contributor, not even like a team lead, not even like a manager, any of that stuff. It's the interfacing with people, and those soft skills are incredibly important to a level that I think people misunderstand when they first start in their career. I remember starting as a help desk technician and being like, this really sucks. I just wanted to work with computers. I don't want to work with people. I don't want them calling me about all these weird things. But you learn a lot of how to work with people, how to problem solve, and how to do all these things by being on that front line and learning those things first. And I think those skills transition. And again, like some of the best techs I've ever worked with have been people who have been like managers at McDonald's, which is, it's a different thing outside of, like it's a different set of skills, but it's still working with people, managing operations, troubleshooting, problem solving, all of those types of things that we do as techs. So I think being a manager isn't a bad thing. It's actually a very interesting thing. It's just a matter of, the time that you're spending during your day of the things that you're doing.
Well, yeah. And this kind of leads to how people tend to think about it when they make that transition, that make that leap, whether it's something that they've willingly accepted or it's been thrust upon them, right? Like
Yes.
the change from, all right, my output is actually really well defined. I know what I'm moving towards, to, well, crap, now I'm trying to like corral all these people to follow a thing. And now my success metric is, are they happy? Is their productivity going stable? Is it going up?
Mm-hmm.
This is a very different, it's a very different type of success metrics. And we know this, the truism of like, people will optimize towards the metrics that they're given, right? And this kind of leads down this road of like, oh, well, maybe if I guide them a little bit here, maybe I push them a little bit over there. Let's just do this and then that, and then, whatever. And this creates an upsetting circumstance. I think that's typically known as the micromanager, right? The one that wants to do everything but can't, and so makes you do everything the way that they want you to do everything. And it's unpleasant. And like they just aren't equipped to handle this, because like usually you're just given this. It's just a thing that you wind up being, you have to do. Either A, the person above you has left, or B, you've been promoted up because like you've demonstrated some inkling of skill that someone has recognized that like could be nurtured if you're put into the new role, or C, you wanted it. And be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. Like,
oh, isn't that true?
All these sorts of things can kind of result in like, I guess a little bit of self-worth and identity crisis. Like, am I actually good? Am I actually, or am I just like it amplifies the imposter syndrome. It makes you feel like you don't know what you're doing. And some people will internally retaliate against that thought process in their head. And it results in, I don't know, I think what a lot of people wind up saying is like, these are these bad overbearing managers, or the ones that are like grotesquely misunderstanding things and whatever. Like it just kind of goes on those directions. And I've seen that more often than not when it comes to people that go from ICs to being managers, is that when they're not prepared for it, even if they've asked for it, they don't know what they're asking for, and it smacks them in the face.
I think that team lead rung is like so important in between, because again, it's a different kind of responsibility, but you're still closer to what you were originally doing as an individual contributor at that point. And I think that is a common mistake that I see that companies do, where they take someone who's from an individual contributor role and just basically be like, well, you've been here for 5 years. You're manager now because you've been here for a certain period of time. I don't think that promotion to manager should work that way ever. I don't think that anyone should ever be promoted just because they've been at a place for a certain period of time. And that's something that is very interesting about Red Hat's culture, in the sense that there isn't just like you've been here for 5-10 years, now you're a senior, or whatever the case may be. It literally is very well laid out in how we structure things at the company. And good or bad, there's like different ways of which to being able to structure these types of things. But I think Red Hat's definitely the largest company I've ever worked at. Now, granted, I'm biased because I worked there, but like, they are the most put together that I've seen in regards to what I've seen mimicked at like smaller, medium-sized companies when it comes to like how the people staffing and promotion sort of thing is supposed to work. Does it always work that way? Maybe not, but like, that's the whole thing. And I think what I'm curious to hear is, Bill, because the highest level that I have ever gotten to in my career has been basically a team lead, and we can talk about open source stuff later in regards to becoming a maintainer and what that entails. But I'm curious what your perspective is on this, given the fact that you've kind of ran the gamut of all the different things.
So right now I mainly manage people. I'm in that boat where I've had to come to terms with the fact that I'm not going to be the best or the fastest tech anymore. And that was hard. It was really, really hard. I needed to remember that I've been managing people since I was 18 years old in a variety of roles, but everything from retail to banking to insurance, call center, IT. And now at the point in my life where I'm at, learning more about myself and knowing I can't be as fast as 25-year-old Bill was. I can't be going up and down ladders and slinging gear across buildings and working 70-hour weeks doing installs, because frankly, the body keeps score. And every time I do that, it takes me another hour, morning, day to physically recover from those things. Now, when I hire people, I don't hire people necessarily in their technical merits. To what you said about soft skills, if somebody comes and interviews with me, I don't ask them any technical questions other than, a couple boilerplate things, but it's mainly, who are you? Who are you? I don't care what you are. I care who you are. I'll teach you what you need to be out in the field. I'll teach you what you need to know to survive in this place. But I'm not going to be able to teach you how to handle difficult customers, or that moment where your heart stops because you think the server is dead and now you're wondering where the backups in the DR are. I remember a time where I was kind of new in management, and a colleague said to me as I was sitting in this chair holding this invisible baby that I didn't know what I was going to do with in my life, "Are you feeling imposter syndrome right now?" And I said, yeah. And the answer was, I wouldn't have put you where you are if I didn't believe in you. And I wouldn't put you where you are if I wasn't able to support you in this journey. Just remember that as a manager and an executive management, you really have two bosses. You have the people that are directly above you, and you have the people that report to you. You technically work for them too. And I've seen many managers either step in and try to be one of the guys and pick up the phone and crimp cables and rack up gear and move servers around. And I look at them and I say, what are you doing? You're going to kill yourself. Stop. You hired a good team.
I've seen the owner of my company that I worked at, my first company, when really hit the fan, for lack of a better way of putting it. He was on the phones answering calls as the owner, which again, the buck stops with him, and that's totally fair. But it was one of those things where it was hard for him once the proverbial storm stopped, where he was like, okay, back to being, the owner now and doing what the owner things are, because for so many years he was one of the guys. And yeah, it's tough, I feel, to walk away from that if it's so part of you.
And this is an uncomfortable truth for at least me, probably also both of you, and I imagine a wide swath of our audience, that it forces you to admit that you're getting older.
Mm-hmm.
And in the tech industry, that's a death sentence. That's traditionally been a death sentence. However, I feel like there's a way to curate this problem into power.
It's AI, right?
No. No. Although I did tell my coworkers that upon my death, I am to be preserved, stuffed in said chair with an AI powering my voice and LEDs for my eyeballs that change color depending on my mood and my answer.
Well, that's good news.
I think that's a great way to keep my memory, my sense of humor, my eclectic management style alive. Before the show, we were talking about certain pranks that happen in my office during, we'll call it a technician being below eye level and trying to do some work when their shirt rides up. And I don't know. Sometimes, hard drive screws get thrown up in the air and they land in random places. And, what are the odds they land, where they shouldn't? And these are things that just spontaneously combust in IT offices. But going back to where I was originally going with this, I remember February of 2022, I had fallen at work. I had shattered my ankle and I was laid up for a long time. What I had to come to terms with was I can either try and be a good senior tech and an okay manager, or I can just concentrate on being the best manager I could ever possibly be for my team and let that be my only goal. Allow myself to still be human with them. It meant my shortcomings. It meant my failures. Don't feel like I have to be part of their ongoings every day. Give them their space. Allow them to vent about me and complain and scream and holler about all the horrible things I put them through. They need to have that outlet. And it's my job to respect that boundary. So usually if a tech leaves, I would say, I am aware of that Teams group that you guys had with me. And I'd say, it's okay. It's a free country. You're allowed to say what you want. I know that space needs to exist. And I clearly remember taking one of my vertical teams, my education team, out to dinner one summer. It's the end of the summer season, and that's their busiest season. They're running around schools, swapping equipment out. And every fall, I would like to take them out around Labor Day to, thank them for their hard work. And I remember one time after we'd all been drinking a little bit, that I said, this last toast is to all of you, because I know you all talk about me behind my back and I don't hear any of it. And you could hear a pin drop at the table. I said, the point of this is not your feelings about me. You're supposed to hate me at times. The fact is that I appreciate the camaraderie you have in each other and that you have each other's back when it matters. That tells me that I've done my job. Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing I think that I've had to learn in executive management is how to let go, how to trust, and how to respect the knowledge that people have, because knowledge changes. What I know about switches and routers and firewalls is not probably relevant next week, a month, a year from now. And I need to rely on those people that do have that expertise. So I always tell people SME, subject matter expert, does not equal SME, subject management expert. Those are two very different and yet still required and complementary skill sets, but usually not in the same person. Now, Neal, you have done a lot yourself, not just in small business, but you've been in startup. You've watched the startup grow into, a larger entity, small, mid-sized business into a large business. You've interfaced with people at Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. You've also managed a ton of open source projects, things where there are not financial incentives. I can't
There's
even
always financial incentives.
Where are they, and where have I been this entire time? Why?
There are always financial incentives. Doesn't mean you get to use them.
So they're just the carrot on the string that you never
Yeah,
get.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yep. That's it in a nutshell, man. That's how that rolls.
Well, there goes that entire segment of the show.
Okay. Well, in all seriousness, right? Like, you're asking me about how this like overlaps between like my experience going from the small all the way to the very large, as well as how that's overlapped with the stuff that I've done in open source, right? So, my career started with literally a 13-person startup. Like I was at a 13-person startup for my first job, and everything was on fire. So just because you're small or you're large does not change the nature of, oh my gosh, everything is always on freaking fire. Like, it's always on fire. The question is, can you figure out how to prioritize which fires need to be handled and which fires can be let to burn? And this is where I think the first starting point of like showing off the leadership skills, even as an IC, tends to come in. A very important part that most people don't really internalize as a management skill is prioritization. Prioritization is like the most important skill that you get as a technical lead, that you leverage as a technical lead, and later as a a management person, right? Like a people manager, or whatever you want to call yourself, right? Because prioritization is how you keep people from burning out. You give them a direction and focus and drive, and you celebrate their successes and you minimize the failures. And all of that stuff is super important. But when you're in a very, very small company, where you don't have layers, like you're doing all of it, you kind of have to bootstrap those functions in yourself. And this kind of comes along the same lines with open source. A lot of times what happens with open source stuff is you'll create a thing, you'll do the thing is cool, you'll talk about the thing somehow shows up on Hacker News, and suddenly the thing is important. And now everything is on fire. So you wind up learning very quickly that writing code is the smallest part of an open source project. Is probably, I mean, for many of my open source projects, it's like 3, 5, maybe 10% of what I do. Most of the time, I'm working through looking at what people have filed. I am evaluating reports that have been given to me, whether it's security reports. We had the ABCs of CVEs. Like, that's a part of the thing I wind up doing. I also deal with jerk faces who try to make the world a worse place. And also will have to review people's patches that they send in, like through pull requests or whatever mechanism that's being used in the project. And all of these things are not writing code. Some of it is related to having written code, like reviewing other people's code and judging the quality of it and all that stuff. Yes, you can only do that effectively if you have written a bunch of code yourself. Don't let any AI tell you that you can review code without knowing how to write code. That is not how that works.
Oh.
Yeah, I know, Bill. I'm sorry. I had to let that out there.
Look, Look,
So
my
Gemini was
vibe
wrong
coded
the
thing
whole.
is perfect.
Wait a minute. So Gemini was wrong the whole time. I mean, I
Well,
was
so-
literally ready to send in the pull request for Fedora.js, all written
Oh my
by
god.
a combination of Gemini, Copilot, GPT, Claude, Perplexity, Grok, Bill AI, which we'll talk about maybe some other day.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
dude, Bill
And-
AI? I'm so excited for this.
And you're going to tell me that all of that's wrong because it needs to be reviewed by humans and management?
Well,
What kind of world do we live in? This is backwards. I mean, after all, we're in, 2071 now.
we are. Okay. I'm going to put that aside for a second because I don't know how we time traveled like almost 4 decades, but like, sure. Actually, over 4 decades. I can't math. But anyway, you don't know whether it's right or wrong if you've actually never written any of the code yourself. If you don't have the skills to, like, this is again where the upladdering, think of the staff engineer, the principal engineer, the architect, right? I think the big, glorious title is the architect, the enterprise architect, if you want to get super fancy. Because once you tack on that enterprise, it's right up there at the top. But like, in all seriousness, right? Like, when those upper levels are only possible because you've done those things and you've kept up to scratch with it. Because your BS meter needs to be properly tuned, and the only way it's going to be tuned is if you actually regularly keep up with that skill. That's not to say that you need to be going and YOLOing a ton of code and that you've written and said like, because I've written code before, I can write code again and everything will be perfect and great and happy sunshine rainbows. No. But being able to regularly, actively practice the skill of developing software means that as you progress through other things and as you go into other functions, as long as you keep up that skill, it is a lot less likely that you will be tricked or otherwise taken by some code that kind of looks like it should work but actually doesn't. Like, ultimately, your intuition degrades if you're not practicing. So you have to.
You also raise a good point.
Maintain. Right.
You made me think of something here that's actually very important in all of this, and it kind of goes back to education a little bit. People go to school or they learn from other humans how to not just write code, but review their own code, submit bugs, create projects as a team, building those soft skills and those technical skills together to create a product. And management has that too. People go to school to get an MBA, to gain other executive skills that they need along the way. And those skills are taught by other Master of Business Administration.
Yeah. You just said the letters. Just making sure people know because it's not the same in every part of the world.
Okay.
We do have a global audience. You're going to throw out letters like that. Explain it, basically. This is the people management part.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Management Basketball Association. That's what it is. It's when a bunch of executives try to play basketball and fail catastrophically.
Yeah. The worst part is I can believe that.
It's something I kind of created maybe just now that consists of parts dodgeball, but with basketballs and managers that hate each other from competing divisions.
So like in a Microsoft shop.
I've never been in a siloed organization before. It's so fun when the managers hate the other managers.
Never. You've never known. Oh my gosh, you've lived an idyllic life.
I know, it's so nice.
See, if I'm going to create my own Fortune 500 company right now, there will be no offices. There's just going to be one long desk.
Oh, yeah.
All the way down.
Oh my god.
One big open office.
Oh.
Yeah.
Everybody gets a seat at the table.
Everyone loses.
No.
All 10,000 of the employees, one desk.
Oh, God.
I win because I watch a social experiment go horribly wrong, which makes me very happy.
You are literally crabs in the bloody bucket.
Going back to what we were talking about before, I did want to say just one thing that I found interesting. I did go to the crap. What was the conference that we went to, Neal, recently?
The Open Source Summit North America?
Open Source Summit North America, yes. And I got the pleasure of being able to see Linus Torvalds in the flesh. He does exist. He is not an AI, contrary to popular belief. I know.
I didn't see who he was talking to. So the person he was talking to might be an AI. Did you see who he was talking to?
It was Dirk.
Yes, Dirk Hohndel. Yes. The Linus and Dirk show.
They need to start their own podcast. That's what they need to do.
Oh my gosh.
They can use my studio.
You want to go send an email to Dirk and go tell him that? Like, let's go.
Yes. Yes. I'm so down for this. But the thing that I found interesting, and you can watch the interview, it's available and recorded.
It's up on YouTube now,
the conference. Right? I think so. I would have to double check, but I'm pretty sure they probably will.
We'll make sure if it is available, we'll make sure it's in the show notes.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the most fascinating things, and I knew this for a while, but it's always kind of mind-blowing to see this. The most code that Linus has written hasn't really been for the Linux kernel. He has mostly been working on his guitar pedal and other little toy projects that he's been doing. Most of his day-to-day now is working with people and managing the project and managing people problems, as he liked to put it. And I thought that was really fascinating to see how that has evolved, because most nerds like us kind of bow down to him, or like, wow, we have an entire industry, because he started a project which wasn't going to get as big as GNU. But,
oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah. But it's important that he still actually does do things like code review. Every pull request that's sent in by subsystem teams, the term of the individual sub-maintainers inside of the Linux kernel project. Every subsystem lead, when they send in a pull request to Linus, he looks at he takes a cursory glance, he compiles it, he smoke tests it on his machine, and if something looks fishy to him, he points it out. And the reason he does that is because while it's not his typical day-to-day to write oodles of code, he tries to keep his skills sharp on the side, just so he doesn't lose his basic intuition, just so that he doesn't lose the things that made him a good engineer in the first place. And again, I'd also like to reinforce, a good engineer is a person that's also good at working with people, because you can't solve problems for people if you can't talk to them. I'm sorry. You cannot just write code and expect it to just be magically good if you don't know the problem you're solving.
My AI assistant is here to talk to the people.
Is this going to be the episode where I just collapse in a heap every time?
My AI assistant is here to give you your employee award.
Oh, no.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's never happened either.
Give me a crystal trophy. Don't give me the AI assistant speech. I don't need it. I want a crystal trophy, and I want money. Those are the two things I want as a reward. Give me the crystal trophy and the money.
And maybe a signed collection of every Sonic game and Doctor Who book ever made.
Actually, I wouldn't mind that.
I'd be down for a cape too. There was a ex-Red Hatter that I'm still friends with, and they used to give out capes for ambassadors when you would refer people into the company.
Oh man, I want a cape.
I know, that's what I said. They're like, you could get a really fancy blazer, or you could get a cape. And he wore that cape to the first ever Red Hat Summit I went to. I was like, I gotta talk to this guy, because he is unironically wearing a cape at the convention, and it's super cool.
Look, man, if I wear my Red Hat fedora, the one I have that doesn't fit on my head, and I have a cool cape to go with it, hell yeah, I'll go for that.
You'll be Carmen Sandiego, basically.
Oh, no.
Oh, I will go out there. I will get the robes. I am all in on that. Even if it's weird as heck, I will flip into that bit.
Some of the best ways that I've decompressed as a manager on some of the more stressful days that I've had are when I ask AI chatbot du jour that I've picked, where I'm the C whatever title of X company, and I'm about to give a keynote speech, and some ridiculous situation happens. How should I navigate the rest of my day? And I just know I'm wasting tokens, but it allows me to laugh at myself as a manager.
Mhm.
And that's always been the hard part, is this sense of pride you have to falsely keep about, I have to be the best all the time, and I have to keep this clear boundary, ceiling floor between me and the people around me, and they must never see any sign of weakness, and abandon hope, all ye who enter my office. I actually did have that sign, and I
Yeah,
had to
that
take it down.
feels on brand for you. I mean, I think I've actually been to your office once and I've seen said sign.
That's at the
man.
other office. I'm not allowed to have that at home.
I
Aw.
know. I've been to your other office once.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I brought you there.
Yeah. Yeah. While it was under sort of construction.
Which it still is.
Yeah.
But that's another topic of management paradox that we'll get into another time.
Oh, I'm
Construction failure.
Instruction failure too.
But you also brought up something interesting, which is the idea of AI managers. And no joke, this is now an actual thing where maybe have we, through the promotion paradox, inadvertently created AI managers that are simply so inhuman that nobody wants to deal with them when there's a real problem. AI is just going to gratify you on whatever you tell it. It's not going to have history, context, interpersonal skills, where maybe, for instance,
it's a sycophant.
It's a sycophant.
Yes.
Noel, I see a cat behind you, and you and I have had many offline conversations about pets and critters over the years that we've known each other. And I can tell you that if you were ever one of my employees and you said, hey, Bill, I need to go to the vet right now, can I have the rest of the afternoon off? I'm going to tell you, yes, and I don't want to hear from you for the rest of the day, and I'm going to check on you at 8 o'clock to make sure everything's okay.
No, he'd say, screw you. You're staying here. Your pet can go, fall apart for all I care.
Oh, no.
And that's how Neal got deleted from life.
No, but that is what an AI manager might do.
But that is exactly what an AI manager would do. Neal is 100% right. The AI manager would say, Noel, you have 1 hour of PTO left. You are unauthorized to take your PTO at this time. Please try again later.
Or it's unpaid and you risk termination.
So that's the context that I'm afraid of with AI managers, because I know that on a day that I have a flood in my basement and I'm not going to be around for a while, or my house burns down, I know that Noel will rally the team around him and say, hey, look, Bill is always stuck up for us. It's our time to support him now. We're going to make this happen so he doesn't have a lot to worry about. AI will never have that context.
Yeah.
I don't think we have. So I'm going to be, oddly enough, the optimist in this conversation. I don't think that we're going to see AI managers become a thing in any meaningful way for precisely the reasons that you're talking about. The moment, the first time that gets turned on somebody, like, it just is just going to be a massive failure.
Oh, there will be revolt. Wherever company that is in, and no matter what size it's in, it'll turn into a revolt. And I think
everyone who knows even a little bit about how this works is intrinsically aware that is what would happen. And that is, I think, the reason why you don't see AI managers. What you see instead is flattening a lot more. And this is also why this conversation about like people being promoted upwards in somewhat involuntarily is kind of important. Because what winds up happening in flattening is that what was typically like 3 levels of middle management squishes down into 1. But in reality, what happens is some of the responsibilities trickle down into the ICs. Some of them float up to the next level. Or just gets spread all sideways, without anyone really knowing what's supposed to be happening. And so from that point of view, you wind up seeing people not really knowing what they're actually supposed to be responsible for. But in the end, naturally what happens is people start taking up the responsibilities. They elevate themselves organically. And this is, again, like what happens in open source. Needs must, and, necessity is the mother of invention. You wind up doing these things because you have to. And otherwise you don't function. So
there's so much political theory when it comes to how to organize people. And management has always been in this context of, like, we talk about in America how we have a democracy. That in an ideal world, yes, we won't go down that road. But what I'm trying to point out is democracy is
technically
the idea of,
we're a republic.
Okay, a democratic republic. My apologies.
Right.
Any of you political nerds out there will feel free to correct me in the comments or what have you. What I find really interesting is that most companies have one single figurehead essentially that runs the entire show, or it has a board. In a larger company, it has a set of people at the top that basically run the show. And it's like, it's not democratic. It's not, like everyone is it's militaristic. It's not representative in any meaningful way. It's definitely not anarchistic, though there are companies that have,
I know of examples of them.
Functional ways in which that they are running their company in a different way. What I find interesting about open source and the way that it functions is that there's so many different types of communities, and you can have one that runs in one way, which is more similar to like you can have a BDFL style of leadership where it's the benevolent dictator for life. What they say goes into the project and how it runs and everything like that. Obviously, there can be delegation in those projects. Then there are other projects, but it's still a dictator. Like they still have the final say, the final word, just like the owner of the company would. And I think what's really fascinating about open source is that you can also have other projects that it's a much more flat structure, like you're talking about. The idea where it's like everybody is here and it's taking on the needs of the project at that given time and how to run things.
I mean, this is basically how Valve works, right? Like they've talked about this pretty publicly. Like they're a very flat organization, and essentially management layers are ad hoc. They exist for the purpose of sorting through a project or a need or presenting a fascia to someone else, to some third party, and then they just don't exist after their need is passed, right? Because ultimately everything is just flat.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about that is basically when you join an open source project or set of projects, and because I've been doing like a lot of interesting reviewing of governance and how projects basically manage themselves. And what I find is very fascinating and interesting about that is that there is no one size fits all governance. And it also is very culturally sensitive topic as well, because you have to listen to the people who are already here. Like if there's not well-established governance from the beginning, then there becomes a need at a certain size when it becomes problematic. You have to have ways in which to be able to resolve disagreements, disputes, whatever the case may be. And that's what can be helpful with establishing governance in a project. And it's definitely one of those things that I think is really interesting when it comes to learning how to be a manager, is understanding how to understand the culture of the place that you work, and understanding the people that and being able to bring them together and to not have them feel like you're being overbearing with them either, because nothing is more painful than having someone who's micromanaging every portion of your day. Like I've had managers like that. I've had managers that are totally hands off, where I actually have trouble getting in touch with them and they like don't know what I have going on at work, which is...
And I hate people like you because meanwhile, I'm trying to have a nice vacation in the Caribbean somewhere, and you're sitting here badgering me with questions about who you are and what job you do. I don't care, man. Just leave me alone and let me have my cocktail.
And I think like that's the very interesting paradox too about working, at a company. Most of the time it's basically a very dictatorial style of managing people. And in open source, it's kind of the Wild West. You can have projects managed and going back to what I was talking about with political theory, it's also kind of one of those things where it's like, it's how you govern people and it's how you manage people. And it's a very fascinating thing because I think everybody's life experience is different. How they grew up, how their parents raised them, how they interacted with their peers, what school did they go to? Like all of those things I think can't really be well understood by an AI in the sense because it doesn't like it can only emulate those experiences that it's had because it has a crap load of training data. Like I can look at something and understand it at a far away level, but to have lived experience is a completely different thing. And I definitely think that AI management is going to fail spectacularly in that area. But I also think that there are a lot of managers, especially at large companies, that act very much in the way an AI does.
Oh, absolutely.
They do not care. They're like, you're out of PTO. Sorry, pound sand.
It's not even that. It's not even that. A lot of managers are afraid to fail because of the pressures and the constraints and the expectations that are put on them by the next manager above them, who is under the same constraints to meet numbers and shareholder value and other things that I personally don't give a crap about anymore. The best managers fail. The best
managers handle failure well.
Correct. There
you go.
Because like everybody fails, right?
Correct.
Like that's the thing. Everyone fails.
Sure.
The difference is how you handle failure. How do you respond to failure, and how do you grow from failure? Because the problem that a lot of people have, it doesn't matter whether you're an IC, a manager, or even a bloody executive, right? Like it really doesn't, because at some point in your career, in your position, in your role, you are going to fail. How you respond to failure is what determines your future success. And when you look at how, it goes on, whether you're in a corporate environment or in an open source one, the underlying condition, for example, the BDFL thing, right? Benevolent Dictator for Life model. The main reason it works is because there's this sort of Damocles hanging over every single project that works this way. And that's the fork button, right? As soon as enough people are upset, the effort to actually say, nope, I'm done, I'm yeeting myself out, and I'm taking everything with me, the amount of effort is pretty low. It is fairly straight. Like, there are many examples of these kinds of forks that have happened in the past. Some have been successful and some haven't. But the fact that they happen on a regular basis effectively creates a check. It makes it so it's not just a dictator, because they are themselves servant leaders, right? In a truly functioning structure, you're a servant leader. Whether you are a middle manager, an executive, or even just a principal architect, right? Like your job at the end of the day is to help someone else. You may not know that's your job, but that is your job.
And speaking of learning, catastrophic management lessons, no one's exempt from this, not even Linus Torvalds. And we all know of the famous incident that happened where he lost his cool and had to kind of backtrack and actually had to acknowledge, I did not handle this well, and I'll work on this and I'll become better. People realized that Linus was actually fallible and that he too is human. And he used that as a chance to let everybody know, I'm human. I still make mistakes. This was one that I made, but I'm aware of it. I apologize for that action and I'll fix it. And since then, are there still acrimonious moments in open source? Of course there are. But I think they're handled much differently in a much more mature fashion than they were in prior days. Nobody really gets away with what we'll call the super old school of scream and holler and beatings will continue until morale improves. It just doesn't.
Yeah, we've generally moved away from that particular model.
Yeah.
And that's because it just doesn't, it never worked, right? Like,
no,
it broke down faster as we got more people that are unable to tolerate it the same degree that some of the old ones did, right? I'm from that era just as this was starting to become not cool to do. And I remember coming into open source communities, and this was essentially the default modus operandi for everybody. And today, you'd be hard pressed to find projects that are reasonably well known that still follow this model. At the end of the day, right? Like when you're thinking about how people move up, how they start as ICs and become into management and then into leaders, whether it pays off or not, right, is entirely up to how well you handle it as an individual. If you are able to adapt to it and take the lessons you learn from the lower rung and apply it to the upper rung and make new lessons to learn to help you get better as you go further on, then yeah, it does pay off. And in companies where there's a recognition of individualistic leadership, as I will call it, which is, the architects, the principal engineers, the staff engineers, the fellows in some companies, right? These types of people who are recognized for, what is now typically called thought leadership, which is they've exercised their skill and understanding to the point that they are able to effectively communicate and drive innovation just by speaking amazing words. And you think that that's not a thing, and it sounds kind of dumb, but no, it's a real thing. And like, this is a big part of why you see, conventions and conferences and presentations and papers and theses and forums and all this other stuff is really to help people cultivate this innate ability to do that sort of thing. And so if you were successful at doing that, then I do think it pays off. You do become more successful. You get to learn, you get to grow. And maybe you, who started as a lowly engineer, who had some interesting big ideas that you couldn't execute on at the place you're at now, eventually you become confident and capable enough. They can go and do it on your own. Bring in a new group of people who are all excited about your idea and start the next great project, the next great company, the next great product, next great service. I don't know. But like that's how that happens. So I actually do think it can pay off, but it's got to work out. You got to have that cultural setup, and you have to set people up for success from the get-go.
Yeah, that I think is a really, really important thing when it comes to creating new leaders and successful leaders. And I think something that I thought about, Bill, when you were talking about previously about how like you want to be able to be out and everybody is able to pull together and be able to take things and just get it done. And we actually saw a talk at the conference that Neal and I went to recently of an educator that started a Linux club. And if we're talking about the next generation of leadership and the things that he has done in the communities, which I find absolutely fascinating and awesome, one of his stories reminds me of that, where he had to leave because there was a family emergency that he had to get to, and he was still in the middle of running the club. And the students said, "Hey, don't worry about it. You go. I will teach the rest of the lesson." And then they taught the rest of the lesson. They all cleaned up and made it look spotless, like they were never there. When he came back, it was no big deal. And I think what's so cool is teaching that leadership at a young age is really important. And I think that can create the next generation of people to make them even better than us. Like, all of us are flawed, but I think the next generation is so important when it comes to those things.
And I think something neat that teacher probably figures out along the way are separating out who are managers and who are ICs and technical people, and allowing both of them to equally sit at the table and have an equal say and work well with each other, and allowing those kids to grow confidence in their skills and in their strengths, and also appreciate each other's skills and strengths and weaknesses to, again, properly build next generation leadership. You and I have, Neal too, have talked about said teacher, and I would love to discuss this more in another episode, maybe where we revisit education a bit, because we haven't really talked about education since AI has embedded itself so far in the educational community. And I'm sure anybody in our audience who is an educator or works in education is going to beat their head against the wall from now until then, because they'll be able to commiserate with sort of what we've talked about this evening regarding just the limitations of management, and the things that AI is just not going to do well. We're all aware of that. We've all talked about it. I think what we need to do is kind of come up with what our practical takeaways are here. What are our SUDO solutions that we can give our audience? And maybe it's obviously not a one size fits all, because that doesn't work whether you're an IC. It doesn't work whether you're a manager.
No.
You can't
It's all situational.
Right. You can't boilerplate somebody needing to go to the vet because their adorable little cat just ate fireworks or whatever else happened along the way. Yes, I cannot get over the cute cat. I just can't. I'm
doing a much better job than you are at ignoring the very cute cat.
That's because you're allergic and I'm not. I'm going to
not
just
even close to true.
Reach through the camera and pet the cat because he's just so adorable. I can't. I'm sorry.
That is not even close to true. I'm not the one in my family that's allergic to cats. The one who is allergic in my family just got a cat.
What?
That's how it always works.
That's crazy.
Man, that's a whole other wild story for another time. But like, no. But I think the other takeaway is, like, a big part of what we've been talking about is being a manager doesn't mean letting go of your skills. It means leveraging those skills to be a better manager, right? Like, so practicing them, even your technical skills, it's a good idea to keep up with them, because you want to have a good BS meter. You want to be able to be semi-productive. You want to be able to speak confidently about the work that your team is doing, because that's how you help your team be successful to your leadership, right? So that's important as well. And that means don't actually completely let go, but maybe not be important in that respect. Like, find a little side thing, find a little fun bit, or just put aside like some small, in the open source world, we have this thing called easy fixes, or first good issues, or easy, stuff that's for a first timer or a youngin to come into. If you, in your team, if you're in a corporate environment doing software development or hardware development or whatever you're doing, find a couple of those. I mean, in the Scrum world, I think you call them like 1-pointers or 3-pointers or small t-shirt sizes or whatever. Find a couple of those and just do them, and just kind of keep yourself sort of in the loop. Don't make yourself a dependency for success, but use it as a way for you to keep your understanding of the project, keep your understanding of what success looks like, and that sort of thing. And again, on the flip side, right, this is the corporate side. On the open source side, as you start getting into these higher rungs, you got to start adapting to the new environment around you. Take breaks, find things to self-motivate, or find other people to come work with you. Just like in corporate environments, in open source ones, arguably it's a little easier in open source ones. You can go find people who are interested or excited and be like, hey, you seem to be well-versed in this. You're super excited about it. You want to come help me out? More often than not, they'll say yes. And the worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work out and you kick them out. And sure, you get to try again. But like, there's an opportunity. You should not be afraid to take that opportunity. And that's how you avoid like stressing yourself out to exhaustion, right?
So maybe it's safe to say, just throwing some numbers out here, that keeping 20% of your hands in the tech and handing off 80% of it to your team may be a place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of go with the 90-10 of,
Okay.
make yourself like 10% as part of it, because I think it's actually important, personally speaking, this is my philosophy, is that you should have some ownership of the thing that you're delivering, because otherwise it's really, really hard for you to be excited, interested, or supportive of the needs of the team around you. Because like if you lose that connection to the project, and you lose that connection to what the team builds and works on, you lose the ability to empathize with them, and that's always going to end badly. So, I would say like 10%. Try to make yourself still part of the team in that sense, and especially in this era where where there's a trend of flattening management and ICs together. There's an increasing trend of managers being made to do IC tasks to survive. While I don't like the reason why this is happening, I don't actually think it's entirely bad. Because good managers need to have intuition and empathy for the rest of their team, or otherwise the team is not going to be successful in the long haul. What will wind up happening is the team will try to find ways to route around the manager. They'll do other things like that. Like it's just totally unpleasant. You don't want any of that. So be part of it. And I think that that's a good thing. I don't think that the way that it's happening right now is the greatest way to do it, but like, I don't think in and itself is a bad thing to have managers, tech leads and such still being part of the project a little bit.
I think the best parting words of wisdom that I can give to my fellow high-level managers out there as we wrap the show up, your team builds things and it builds products, and that's their job. Your job is to build people. The people are your product. And sometimes you have to tear it down to make it better. And sometimes you have to tear yourself down to make it better. But let your team build the thing and you build the team. And if you can concentrate on that, everything else will fall into place. Well, that wraps it up for another episode of the SUDO Show. This was a lot of fun talking about management, the joys of embracing management or not embracing management or failing at management or letting AI take over management. Maybe that is going to be your thing.
Neal's going to fall out of his chair. I'm calling it soon.
Maybe if we keep talking about AI, maybe we do that on one off-color episode where we keep talking about synergy and AI management and we time how long it takes for Neal to fall out of the chair.
Oh man, you do realize that I can beat the pants off of both of y'all about well, maybe not Bill, but I can definitely beat Noel at the game of corpo speak.
I just won't understand it, and I'll just start playing games on my phone or falling asleep. And because again, it's just another foreign language to me. It's just gibberish and a combination of Charlie Brown's Teacher and cotton in my ears.
Sounds like some of the meetings at work.
And on that wonderfully enlightening note, wah, wah. Thanks as always for watching or listening to the SUDO Show where business meets Linux. Until next time, see you later.
Bye-bye.